Escape to Southern Point. Men Among Sirens, Volume 1 in Jennifer Olmstead's Virginia Southern Point Collection. Copyright 2009, Jennifer Olmstead and Book Surge. Copyright 2024, Jennifer Olmstead and Titian Press. All rights reserved worldwide. Narrated by Priscilla Davis. Forgotten is Forgiven. F. Scott Fitzgerald. Men Among Sirens. Chapter 1. Ainsley Bowen's footsteps echoed through the cavernous entrance hall of 313 Water's Edge Lane. It was a scorching Wednesday in June, just shy of 8 in the morning and humid enough to leave you breathless. But the Victorian home's foot-thick walls held fast against the onslaught of another Southern Virginia summer. Through the front door's leaded glass window, Ainsley saw 3 young women crammed together against the threshold, each of them clutching a large object to their chest. They reminded her of restless racehorses gambling in a closed starting gate in the final seconds leading up to a race. "Good morning, ladies." She spoke quickly and stepped aside, clearing their path toward her daughter. "Good morning, Mrs. Bowen," they answered back. Individual voices were indistinguishable as the trio sprinted by her chattering and began scaling the thick oak steps of the foyer's massive spiral staircase. Sage green bridesmaids' dresses, sheathed in plastic and dangling from hangers, sailed along behind them. "Hurry up, guys," 21-year-old Ruby Bowen called down the stairwell. "We only have an hour this morning. Got a family breakfast thing at 9. Barefoot and dressed in a gauzy white skirt and pink cotton top, Ruby precariously balanced her upper body over the second-floor balustrade. Long, straight, toffee-colored hair fell past her shoulders and framed her heart-shaped face. With the sun streaming onto her from a window above, she looked ethereal. The siren gene. That's what Ruby's maternal grandfather Don Plant called it. He coined the phrase for his wife Julie, the first of 3 generations of women with the same voluptuous build, impervious to any amount of weight training or dieting, gossamer brown hair, and pale blue eyes. The women were a living testament to the power of heredity. And heredity dealt them one wild card. Well-proportioned, almost elegant noses, except for a small but noticeable bump in the middle. A veteran lawyer, Don maintained a pragmatic yet philosophical stance on their shared flaw. "Something had to give, to keep you humble," he reasoned. "Otherwise, you'd be too perfect. You'd lack character." 3 short days and a lengthy list of unfinished tasks remained until Ruby's Saturday wedding, throwing the entire Bowen household into varying degrees of chaos. Fortunately, 313 Water's Edge Lane provided more than enough room for all the necessary wedding preparations and revelry. Ainsley had converted the home's now dormant playroom and her adjoining dressing room into a pre-bridal salon for Ruby's hair, makeup, and wardrobe, as well as storage for a steadily growing mound of wedding gifts. 7 spare bedrooms stood ready to accommodate out-of-town family and any friends who celebrated more heartily than anticipated. Following an afternoon church ceremony, the reception would take place under tents in the Bowens' expansive side yard, the same location as Ainsley's wedding reception 24 years before. By 9 o'clock, Ruby's bridal party huddle was complete. She trailed behind her friends as they clattered down the stairs and out the front door. "Final fitting tomorrow morning, guys. Then it's spa day. Don't be late," she called to them before wheeling around and running down the hall to find her mother. "My God, Ruby, you're effervescent," Ainsley said, amused by her daughter's unbridled giddiness. "I know, Mom. Here I am embarking on the most adult of journeys, and I'm acting like a kid. But I'm just so happy." Ainsley sensed an emotional outpouring on the horizon. Ruby obliged. "Mom, I want to thank you for all the help you've given me with the wedding," she told Ainsley. I know you and Dad, well, you mostly, are worried about me being only 21 and Rob and I making this huge commitment. When you married Dad, you were only 1 year older than I am now, and look at your marriage. All these years together, what you've been through, Uncle John's death, Dad's accident. Her voice wavered with sentiment. I've learned so much from you two. We're ready to do this and we'll make it work. Mom, I'll be in DC, only 3 short hours away. She took a breath, sniffled, and wiped her nose. Ainsley smiled with reassurance, unwilling to spoil Ruby's vision of her parents' marriage days before the start of her own. It was her daughter's right to feel a sense of joy and endless possibilities the week of her wedding. Ruby, if any two people belong together, a sudden deafening roar drowned out her words. The thunderous boom escalated to ear-splitting decibels with each passing second as a pair of FA-18 Hornets breached the airspace over the house, producing a high-pitched hum in dozens of century-old windows, forcing glass panes to rattle in their frames. Flyovers were a daily occurrence in Virginia Beach, typically at 8 or 9 in the morning, noon, and 4 o'clock, drawing phone calls, arguments, church services, weddings, and funerals throughout the city to a simultaneous minute-long halt. I love jet noise stickers adorned tens of thousands of vehicles and storefronts alike, reminders of the military's integral presence in the community. Ruby locked eyes with Ainsley. I know, Mom, she said, looking upward. Uncle Johnny. She'd never met Ainsley's brother, U.S. Navy Captain John Johnny Angel Plant of Oceana Air Station's Heaven Bulldog Squadron. His jet took a fatal dive into the Atlantic Ocean just shy of a year before Ruby was born. Vestiges of John lingered in the house, photographs, stories her parents and grandparents shared on birthdays and holidays. The personal effects she browsed in his third-floor bedroom, which remained much as he left it when he joined the Navy in 1982. Speaking of uncles, Ainsley said, shaking off an old, stubborn wave of sadness, have you seen your dad or your Uncle Blaine this morning? I think Dad is in the kitchen having coffee with Rob and Grandma and Grandpa. As she spoke, Ruby made a futile attempt to tie her straight, slippery hair into a knot. I don't know about Uncle Blaine. Ainsley took a turn at smoothing Ruby's hair and managed to fashion it into a spiky, twisted bun. Would you find him and tell him we're ready to go to breakfast? She asked. Sure, Ruby replied. When we get back, we can drop the others off here and hit those stores we talked about. I need help picking out a bathing suit for Fiji. Absolutely, Ainsley agreed. Ruby ascended the stairs, straight-backed, her chin upturned, clearly practicing for Saturday's trip down the aisle. Once she vanished from view, Ainsley went into the downstairs guest bath to freshen up and comb her hair. Confronting her reflection in the mirror, she had to acknowledge that time was finding its way onto her face. A fine line at the corner of each eye, slight deepening of the contours of her cheeks, that inexpressible trace of grief behind her smile. World-weary but still pretty for what that was worth. What was it worth in an unfulfilled life? An occasional stare or glare, depending on the situation and the gender of the observer. Maybe the waning of physical beauty, however subtle or graceful, served as a stark visual record of how much in life cannot be recaptured, a cruel mapping of the loss of youth. Hers was falling away behind her, and she feared growing old and regretting not only her mistakes, her sins, but also those things she should have found the courage to do and couldn't name or define. That reflection was too painful to confront right now. She turned off the bathroom light. Upstairs, Ruby floated by her bedroom, pale blue with white draperies and bed linens, bathed in sunlight from a floor-to-ceiling bay window. She passed the hall bathroom, the linen closet, and a small alcove on the way to her Uncle Blaine's room, the same room he used each time he visited from Michigan. The room's heavy door had drifted open, its untrustworthy old latch once again failing to hold without the skeleton key engaged. As she pulled her hand back to knock, Ruby caught him standing in front of a full-length mirror, wearing black paisley boxers and an open white shirt. She didn't mean to look. It was startling to see him half-dressed for the first time in her life. He secured two small collar buttons and buttoned his cuffs, then moved in the open shirt and rolled his shoulders, exposing a tight, smooth abdomen. Ruby didn't know of any other 50-year-old man as fit as he was, especially in his line of work. She stood in place, curious, watching him as he buttoned the shirt's placket. That's when she saw it. A small burgundy spot, not much larger than a mole, inside his right hip bone. She froze, locking in on the mark as though it was a target. "Oh my God!" she shrieked, jerking back her hand. She ran to her room, slamming and locking the door behind her. Alarmed by Ruby's screams, Blaine went to the staircase landing, still barefoot in his boxers. "Ainsley! Ainsley!" he shouted into the stairwell as he ran to Ruby's door. "Something's wrong with Ruby!" Ainsley grabbed the staircase railing and rushed up the stairs, all 32 of them, to the second floor. "Ruby," she gasped, winded from the climb. "Are you hurt?" She elbowed Blaine out of the way and pounded on Ruby's bedroom door. No answer. She tried the doorknob. "Ruby, please!" Through the thick door, Blaine and Ainsley heard muffled crying and creaking floorboards as footsteps came in their direction. Seconds passed, a key turned in the lock, and the doorknob crawled sideways. "I think someday is here now," Ainsley said, motioning Blaine away as the door began to open. He stayed in place. "Please, Blaine," she whispered. "Go downstairs with the others. Take them to breakfast now. Keep them there while I find out what's going on." "Are you sure you'll be all right?" he asked, placing a hand on her shoulder. "What are you doing?" she snapped, rebuffing the gesture. He hurried to his room to finish dressing. An inch of daylight separated the dark mahogany door from its doorway, and Ruby's red, tear-stained face filled the space. "I hate you," she seethed. Ainsley was frantic. "For God's sake, let me in! What is going on?" Ruby cracked the door wide enough for Ainsley to squeeze through, closing it tight after her. "I don't want him in here." Ainsley tried once more to reason with her daughter. "Is it the wedding?" she asked, praying that her suspicions were wrong and Ruby's outburst was a simple case of cold feet. "Are you having second thoughts? Because that's normal, you know." "No!" Ruby shouted, tears rolling down her chin and onto the front of her t-shirt. "What's normal about this?" She pushed up the shirt and shoved her skirt down past her hip. "Look familiar, Mom?" She collapsed onto the bed, sobbing. Ainsley sat down next to her. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "Sorry?" Ruby roared back. She dropped her head onto a pillow and stared at the wall, absorbing the shock of her revelation. "I feel dirty," she said, and then shot up from the bed and began hurling questions. "What kind of person are you? How could you do this to me and our family? With Uncle Blaine? That's sick!" "Ruby, please, keep your voice down," Ainsley pleaded. "I wanted to shield you." "Shield me?" Ruby paced the floor with clenched fists. "I do need to be shielded from you. My whole life, I thought you were a good person. I idolized you. I wanted to be you. I thought that you loved Dad. Oh, God, Dad." A look of disgust washed over her. "What's been going on here in our house and up in Michigan all of these years?" "I never meant to hurt you or your father," Ainsley insisted. The faint sound of multiple footsteps and Chris Bowen's motorized wheelchair rolling along the porch floorboards below indicated that Blaine had been successful in herding the others off to breakfast, leaving the two women with the house to themselves for several hours. We'll go downstairs, Ainsley said as she opened the bedroom door. I'll make some coffee. It sounded absurd. She had no idea why she suggested it. Coffee? Ruby was incredulous. I don't want coffee! She stormed past Ainsley and out of the room. 5 minutes later, Ruby reunited with her mother in the kitchen. Despondency had replaced her anger. She wore a glazed expression as she sat on the fireplace hearth, her arms wrapped around her knees, holding herself tightly. It's true, isn't it? She asked. Who knows about this, aside from you and Blaine? Her lip curled in repulsion as she said his name. She looked as though she was about to be sick. Who else, Mom? She demanded. Surely not Dad. No one else knows, Ruby. I've lived a very careful life. You mean lie, don't you? Ruby corrected her. You've lived a very careful lie. You and Blaine. Ainsley pulled a chair up to the kitchen's long rectangular table, host to countless school projects, holiday baking marathons, late night talks, and even a tryst or two when she and Chris were newlyweds. Ruby, it's a lot, she said, exhausted from the confrontation and from guarding the secret of her past for more than 2 decades. Her finger traced the letter A, permanently etched into the table's surface, a relic from her own childhood. How much of this story do you want to hear? She asked. Ruby let out a weighty, miserable sigh, wiped tears from her face with her hands, and fused her brows together in a frown. All of it, she said coldly. I want you to tell me all of it.